My fellow viewers, I want to welcome you once again to the Kodia talk show channel. We have been addressing various issues touching on the role of the state, taxation issue, and many others. Today, I want to shift a bit and touch on continental issues as they currently affect the people of Africa. Africa has undergone difficult moments in life, conflicts after conflicts. Africa was subjected to colonial power, and it became an arena of conflicts between powers from Europe, from Asia. And Africa was divided into many zones. Some parts became identified as Anglophone, the areas which were once ruled by the British. Other parts became known as Francophone, the parts which were led by the English people, the French. So there were French, there were Belgians, there were Portuguese, there were Germans, Spanish. Everyone had a stake in the continent of Africa. But before the invention of Africa by the Western colonial powers, there were also conflicts between communities that were living in Africa. But at some point, they had the mechanism of resolving their conflicts. Like kings that were at war, they would solve their conflicts by encouraging intermarriage between the royal families from both sides. They had their own ways of redeeming themselves from the anguish of hostility. When the colonial powers came to Africa, one of the most important instruments of division they used that guaranteed their continued claim on power in Africa was to divide the people, dividing them into different zones. For example, they came with the linguistic classification of the people of Africa. Some were claimed as Nilotics, some Bantus, and in Kenya, for example, some of the Bantus were claimed as lawyers in Western Kenya. Some communities were not understanding each other, even linguistically. But because of the semblances in some of their words, they were clamped together. These are lawyers. See, there were Nyores in Kenya, Maragolis in Kenya, Bukusus in Kenya. They were all clamped together. And sometimes they cannot even agree, even amongst themselves. But according to the colonial powers, these were all lawyers put together. And today, I want to say, lawyers have different versions even of the Bible. And most of them would rather use Kiswahili other than using a Lohia Bible, because when you talk of a Lohia Bible, there are so many versions of lawyers. I don't want to talk about all this. I'm just giving an introduction to the politics in Africa. So my main focus on this topic is to address the issue of citizenship in Africa and elsewhere else. What determines a person's citizenship? Is it where a person is born? Is it the blood of the parents of the person who has been born? Is it the registration of a person? There are so many things which determine the citizenship of a person. I'm linking this to the colonial legacy, whereby when the British ruled East Africa and during the partitioning of Africa, boundaries were demarcated. Some of these boundaries left outside or created division amongst certain communities which were found on both sides of the political divide or administrative structures they had developed. In East Africa, for example, we have the Luo. Luos like calling themselves Luo nation. Luo is an Nilotic community that is found in many parts of East and Central Africa. You'll find them in Ethiopia. You'll find them in South Sudan. You'll find them in DRC Congo. You'll find them in Uganda. And more than that, they are distinct Luos speaking the same language, having the same culture, who are found in both Kenya and Uganda. I mean, Kenya and Tanzania. So in Tanzania, there is a very big population of Luos outside Kenya. They speak the same thing. They are Luo Sobas, but the thing is, Sobas are treated as Bantus. But the truth is, more the more recent study shows that the Bantuness of the Sobas have virtually disappeared as they had been assimilated by the Luos. So the question is, do we discriminate Sobas and say they are not part of the Luo community? No one will agree with you, because what determines a tribe? Is it the blood or is it the culture? When we talk of culture, we talk of also the language people speak, the behaviors, the habits acquired over a period of time. Moi, when he was ruling Kenya, he wanted to limit the powers or the influence of the Luos. And he wanted to create a consciousness of the Sobas that they are not part of the Luos. That scheme did not work. So Luos are found everywhere. Whether it's Soba Luos or the so-called original Luos, that's neither here nor there. But you go to Tanzania, there is a big number of the Luos there. In the church, there are several dioceses with bishops, Luo-speaking bishops in Tanzania. Apart from the Luos, there are Maasais. These Maasais are also found in Kenya as well as in Tanzania in a big way. Now, when the colonial boundary was used to demarcate or to separate these communities, it took them time to recognize the sanctity of those boundaries. And that's why there was a problem even between the Tanzanian government, even during Magufuli period, where they intercepted most cattle from the Kenyan Maasai that grazed into the territory of Tanzania. And that almost caused a rift between the two countries, neighboring countries. First of all, Maasais don't recognize those boundaries because their kin and kith are on both sides. They want to share, they want to visit each other. Cows don't understand boundaries. Neither fish in the lakes understand this boundary, imaginary boundaries. There was a time President Museveni had a problem with the Kenyan side of Lake Victoria when he decided that his security forces be installed in Migingo Island to control the fishermen there and collect some revenue. When he was reminded that the island is on the side of Kenya, his argument was that the island is in the Kenya like any fish, but fish is from his side of the lake. Where is the boundary? How do you do this? So we have a problem of greater magnitude here. And who is the citizen of East Africa? Who is the citizen of Kenya? Can a citizen of Kenya also claim to be a citizen of Tanzania or of Rwanda or of anywhere else? We have to deal with these problems of colonial past. We cannot ignore it. And our leaders must come to the table, must reason with their people. How well should we accommodate these diversities? Now the problem in DRC Congo is also borders on the same thing. The Tutsis in Congo, that was part of their territory long time ago. But when the colonial powers came and divided the Congo, part of them remain in the now DRC, and part of them remain in Rwanda, part in Burundi, and many other parts of the country. Now, for you to ask now, the Tutsis in DRC, go back to where your people are, it is illogical. The same way, we cannot ask Maasais who are living in Kenya, go back, go to your colleagues or counterparts in Tanzania because that's where you belong. That is illogical. In Germany or in Belgium, there are mixed communities living in the same places. We have the Dutch, we have the Germans, we have the French, and all these people, and they're living together. What is the problem with Africa? That even living together is a nightmare. What is the problem with us African leaders? That we are always drumming for war. What is the problem with us? That we cannot live in a cohesive manner. What's the problem with us? If it is war over resources, then the resources we are fighting for is not helping us, because what is aggravating conflicts every now and then? It was a great shame for our African leaders fighting over the issue affecting another country. The president of South Africa threatening Rwanda, Rwanda daring the president of South Africa. What is it that is itching us that every other time we must only think of war? War cannot solve problems. Even the superpowers, they have tried the war, is not solving problem. Russia superpower tried it in Ukraine. And they thought it was going to be a walkover, 2 days, 5 days, 6 days, weeks. Then it ended to months, and now we are talking of a year plus. War cannot help in solving a problem. We must appreciate our boundaries the way they are. Though the colonial powers had created them, and we cannot go back to the drawing board to start drawing new boundaries. The problem is we must appreciate those who found themselves on either sides of the boundary and live harmoniously. We must recognize the potential of each and every community that is within our boundaries. Give them a voice they deserve. Help them to promote their welfare instead of engaging in ethnic emotions every now and then. Will Africa really have some rest so that they grow its economy? As it is not the case. We want to show power and we want to fight. And the people who are affected most, women and children who cannot fight. Men in the fighting age, they are losing their future because what they are concentrating on is war. And we learn that war is the order of the day. Africa, wake up. Appreciate what your history has done. Whether it was a bad way or a good way, this is where we are. If you are a Kenyan, appreciate that there are some communities. They may not be more in number, like we have the Somali on Kenyan side and also Somali on the Somalia side. We must appreciate those who found themselves on the other side of Kenya. And we treat them equally as Kenyans. Because more often than not, people from that side of Northeastern, when they are coming to that, they say we are going to Kenya. Because they are not feeling the positive side of being in Kenya in terms of resource distribution. Let's wake up. Our leaders, let's stop this idea of meeting only to discuss non-essential issues. There's no point having African Union that cannot solve its own internal conflicts. There's no point. We spend a lot of money sending delegation to these union meetings and meetings every other year. We want to see the value of those meetings. We have the IGAD. We have the East Africa Community. We want to see the value of those institutions that have been created by Africans working. Recently, Trump threatened, and in fact, he issued executive order stopping most of aids to other parts of the country, including World Health Organization. Oh, we started running up and down. Oh, we are dying. Trump, reconsider, ABCD, ABCD. All these years, if we cannot think of how we can reinforce the institutional structures that support our economy, that support our health, then there is no point having leadership in Africa in the first place. Do we have to surrender our sovereignty so that we are recolonized again by Americans, by the British, or lately by Chinese? Something is wrong somewhere. So leaders, time has come for you to stop stealing the resources of Africa and allow those resources to be plowed back so that where those resources are generated, the people in those localities must be allowed to benefit from those resources. And there will be no conflict at all. But if there are some few greedy leaders colluding with some foreign powers to steal the African resources. That one we say no. May God bless you as you meditate on these issues affecting our continent. We need civility in the way we deal with African issues. Thank you. May God bless you.